And good late afternoon and welcome in. This is Game Time Decisions. I'm Craig Mish. Joe Raineri will be along shortly as we get ready for this late afternoon and evening slate in Major League Baseball. Also keeping an eye on the NFL preseason. Week 2 begins officially tomorrow. And would you believe college football actually begins next week? So we'll get to all of that here on the show today. We'll take a look at some of the evening games, and for some teams it is a getaway day with a day off tomorrow. For some other teams, they're in the middle of a 4-game series, and certainly we'll break down all of the games and go through them as well. We do have some final scores today, which we'll discuss, and some upsets as well in Major League Baseball, as we saw some today and some really magical finishes. I think maybe the most important one in terms of the playoff position had to be, I think without a doubt, the New York Mets, who have played some pretty good baseball. Mets defeated the San Diego Padres today, so they picked up a win there. My guy Robert Stock had a really nice start again, ended up pitching 4+ innings, gave up just 1 run, and held the Padres bats at bay. So Stock's done a good job for the Mets. Outside of 1 start, he's been really good. So I think I may have nailed that one. Mets end up taking that game there. And yeah, Paul Skeens did not pitch well, in case you missed it earlier today. You know, as I said, I just don't think there's going to be a fix for this, at least initially. But the good news for the Pirates is the bullpen really came through for them. And then Brandon Lau hit a walk-off home run for the Pirates, who are trying to hang around in this wild card picture. Currently, on Fangraphs, their odds are less than 5% to get into the playoffs, but at least a win for them today has them feeling a little bit better. And then the one game that Joe and I will be following while we're on the air today, we actually have 2 games, but the first that's going on right now is in the 4th inning. Peyton Tolley, who is having this magical season for the Boston Red Sox, and it just continues. Boy, it feels like Arizona may have hit this big snag with no Ketel Marte, because they absolutely can't score. Lost yesterday, losing today 2-0 to the Red Sox in the 4th inning. And then we'll throw out the first pitch in Philadelphia as the Philadelphia Phillies take on the Marlins. The Phillies going for the sweep, and the Marlins behind Sandy Alcantara, hoping to get 1 win in this series. So let's bring in Joe Raineri here for the next couple of hours. And Joe, I know quite busy in your world right now. Congratulations on your new little venture here. I saw it popping on social media today. So you got a brand new show every day from 4 to 5 as well. So congrats on that. And welcome into Game Time Decisions. And, you know, you're going to be a lot busier here now. Your days are now, you know, a little bit more swamped than they were maybe, let's say, 48 hours ago.
It is all good, Craig, but I certainly hope you didn't bury the lead, because
in just a minute.
Yeah, well, that would be great if you can turn me on. There we go. Thanks very much, guys. I'll tell you this. I hope you didn't bury the lead, because I know I heard you taking credit for Stock, and don't forget, not forget that it's 1-1. I think 1-1 since you've actually backed him. But I got to give you credit, because you called it on the show, and the guys behind the season the guy behind the network here will never, ever give you credit. I will, because that's who I am. Your call on the Angels last night had to be amazing. I'm just saying, had to be amazing.
They did.
Oh, there you go. It was outstanding. Well done that you called the Angels last night.
Look, I only could call the guys that I see. Usually if I don't see it, I can't call it. But let's also not forget, I was totally wrong. I thought the Reds would have a great offensive day, and they didn't score a run. You know, I would ask, you know, I guess this is, before we get to the games today, I would ask you, I guess it's an easy answer, because I was going to say, what's more embarrassing, the Cincinnati Reds offense at this point, Joe, but they got outdone last night in that game in Milwaukee that the Brewers won 22-0 with Julio Rodriguez at the end of the game throwing the ball into the stands, thinking that there were 2 outs. I had a suspicion last weekend, was it last weekend or the weekend before? I don't remember, when they invited all the legends back. I've talked about this every day here on the show. Joe, you know, and I know, when you retire a player's number at halftime in an NFL game, or there's some sort of ceremony, not game 1 of the season, not game one. Game 1, you know, the team lifts the banner, they lose. It's pretty much clockwork. I'm saying when a team gets energized, maybe you're watching Randy Johnson and Edgar Martinez and Ken Griffey Jr. and the best players in the 90s and the 2000s, maybe in the history of the game, the team that won over 100 games, and you get swept in your own building, Joe, that had me really concerned about Seattle. Now I'm even more concerned. I'm concerned for their manager. I'm concerned for their front office, because when a mistake like that happens and a player is just not paying attention at all, you can't fire the player. You know, if this was a job, the player would have gotten fired. The person would have gotten fired for really screwing up on the job. You can't do that.
Right.
And you have to look to other things. I personally like Dan Wilson, and I think he's a really good guy. I think he did a great job with Seattle last year. But there's no question, Joe, that was the most embarrassing game and moment of the Major League Baseball season for one team. That was it.
Well, I thought it was funny. I woke up this morning. I was like, oh, they play a football game? The Seahawks playing? Yeah, like what in the world? And then you're like, oh, yeah, but I'll say this. Two things. Number one, there was somebody on this show yesterday that tried to warn you about Leahy and Cincinnati there and their ability.
You really liked him, yeah. I did not.
Number two, I am a big believer in personal responsibility. And we can blame Wilson and everybody else that we want. The 9 players that were on that starting card, that lineup, that falls on them. It falls on you for not knowing. Now, granted, he did that. It was 17-0, right? So, but again, you're a professional. You're not a little leaguer. Like you're getting paid multi-millions of dollars to know how many outs there are and to compete one way or the other. So if you're kicking in, if you're throwing the towel in because it's 16-17-0 and you don't care, he should have gotten ripped right out of the lineup at that point and move on. Don't blame the manager. Don't blame the front office. Blame the 9 players that allowed it to get to that point last night. And I don't think that you just don't wash that off, Greg, to your point. That kind of lingers for a couple of days. Not to mention, Dusty May going tonight against Logan Gilbert. They could have played that game 50 times. I don't think Seattle combined in those 50 games scores more than 22 runs. I think that's the difference between these two teams.
Yeah, Milwaukee, of course, is just so good at home, and so look, there's something to be said for that. And look, I've been around a while and been in the clubhouses and covered the game for a really long time. That's going to be really hard for Seattle to come back from. Yes. It's not to say that they can't win a game or two, but I was thinking about this on the way home. My son and I were talking about this. That there's no question that if you just look at baseball this season, the Giants have been disappointing, and there have been some other teams too. I mean, the Mets probably in the end are going to go down as the most disappointing team in baseball this season. I think that is fair. When you have that kind of payroll, you decide to overturn the entire team and say goodbye to Nimmo and goodbye to Alonso and goodbye to Edwin Diaz and just goodbye to everyone. And let's just figure it out and put some guys in place, and you just throw the same money, if not more, at different players, and you're this bad. They're going to go down as the most disappointing team. Why do I bring that up, Joe? I don't think Seattle is that far behind. Seattle has no business being 59-67 on the season. Like, this is a bad team. It's not they're 2 games under 500. Okay, we could play maybe not. The American League, Joe, is bad. They should not be this far down. You can see finally they're not favorites to win the West anymore. They're not second. At least they're third at this point. So I have some concerns there for Seattle, but give credit to Milwaukee, man. They just you go into that place, Joe, and it's like, it's very rare. You kind of expect to lose. I think that's kind of the way I view it.
Listen, there are always going to be some of those outlier games, but I think that game signified and put a bow on exactly what the season has been like for Seattle here and Cal Raleigh, and go down that lineup and go down that list where, guys, the expectations were risen because of what they did a year ago. Not so much anymore. But does that mean we should bet against them tonight? We got much more as Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser, A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish, as we've got plenty going on here, getting ready, of course, for week 2 of the NFL preseason. A lot more injuries to get you guys caught up with here. All of a sudden, the Saints, oh boy, they lose their number 1 draft pick, Jordan Tyson, for a couple months with a hamstring the other day. Alvin Kamara goes down today. Olave carted off the, and I had high hopes for the Saints this year, but the injuries really starting to pile up in a big, big way for them. And I heard you mention earlier as well, Craig. I thought of you because Skeens was going today with the early start in Pittsburgh. And I was wondering, you remember last year, his strikeout props were 7.5. I mean, you couldn't find anything at 5.5. That just wasn't happening. And sure enough, today, 5.5 was out, and he didn't get it. He didn't make it 5 innings again. Craig, what is going on?
Yeah, like I said, I think you just have to wait until the end of the season. I promise you that Paul Skeens is going to be a beast again next year. They're going to figure it out. They're going to get him on the right workout, whatever it needs to be. A lot of weight, no weight, arm slot, no arm slot. Whatever's going on, Joe. I've attended, I don't know how many games this season. Let's see. So I've attended probably. I mean, I'm doing a total of 70 games 70 games at the end of the season, and I went to 2 in Tampa Bay. I'm going to end up close to 100 games this season, so I've seen it all. Okay, you can't fix a pitcher in a month. You can't do it. It takes, for a pitcher like that, it takes time. Can you make some little tweaks along the way? Sure. But physically, you just can't change a guy. Like, you can't. They asked him probably to be somebody else than what he is right now, and it's obviously affected him. And he's going to be a Cy Young Award candidate next year. He's going to be a superstar. He's going to be back. But they're going to sit down. They're going to go through the video. They're going to go through his workouts. They're going to find the smartest guy in the world to fix Paul Skeens, and he's going to get fixed. I am not concerned whatsoever with him. But as we've discussed, if you think that just magically next week he's going to throw 8 innings, 1 run, strike out 10, that's not happening. Now, it doesn't mean, by the way, that Skeens is a pitcher on the Rockies or the A's. He's still probably going to give you 5 innings of 3-run ball and occasionally 6 or 7 of 2-run ball. Yes, he's just not. It doesn't appear he's going to dominate like Bubba Chandler or Braxton Ashcraft, who's just amazing. It doesn't appear that he's going to be one of those guys for the rest of the year. So they did win today, so good for them. The Pirates, Joe, somehow, or like, it feels like the rope is about to be cut, and then whoop, they grab the rope and then they're back in again, so they're barely still alive. I think you could officially, after last night, put a fork in the Reds. They didn't score again, which, as you said, Leahy was going to pitch well, and he did. I just can't believe the Reds can't score against anyone with that offense in that park. So the National League wild card, I think, is more clear right now, Joe, than it has been, than it was a week. I think it's getting very clear for me. So the Braves got swept by the Twins, but the Braves are sleepwalking through it. Those first three teams are in. And if Pete Crow Armstrong is just going to win every game for the Cubs, they're in too. Joe, I think the Phillies are going to make it. They look good, man. I think they are. And so that last spot probably going to come down to San Diego or Arizona. Arizona, having some issues with Ketel Marte. I would love for the Marlins to win $1 million in a row and jump back into this thing. But realistically speaking, I mean, you can just check the same Fangraphs website. Their odds are down to 5%. That's very low. Joe, a week ago, we thought, it could be this team. I don't think so anymore. I think we pretty much, the American League, forget it. We're going out to the last day and the last hour. But I think the National League, to me, is starting to come in focus. I don't know. Maybe you don't feel the same way, but I do. I feel like now I think Philly has now put themselves in a position where I'd be very surprised if they didn't capture one of those wild card positions.
Well, I think it was very good to see Wheeler. I think he went 5 innings last night. Ray went 5. He looked much better than he has looked previously. But again, that wasn't domination by the Phillies last night, and it ain't going to be domination tonight, by the way. No. So give the Marlins, I give them a ton of credit for keeping the games close. But I think you're right. I think we can probably now look at Arizona and say, this Marte situation is not going to get any better anytime soon. It's a big part of their offense. It was a big part of what this team was. I don't know how they kiss and make up and bring him back now that he's not getting paid and he's on the bad boy list. All of that is not playing well at this point in the season. So the question is, are the Padres, did they peak too soon? Did we see the best that they have? Or are we in a battle with a team like the Cardinals, who's going to win 11 out of 14 games down the stretch, and they're going to be in it somehow? I hope it's the Padres, because I think it'll be more meaningful and better baseball. But I think that's the only question we're left with in the National League, Craig, is do we trust that the Padres have not hit their ceiling yet, is my question.
I think Arizona's issue is San Diego's issue. But it's a non-issue, which sounds crazy, but this is what it is the Padres and the Diamondbacks are going to pile on games against the Giants and Rockies at the end of the season. Those two teams have an easy path to the playoffs. But I simply don't think that Arizona now is good enough to dominate those teams like they were a week ago. I'm a little worried about that. So as soon as Arizona plays Colorado, that San Diego at some point is going to get them again. And then they're going to get the Giants. And then they're going to pile in some wins. Those teams are probably together going to win a lot of games toward the end of the season. Miami's schedule and St. Louis's schedule is much more different. St. Louis plays the Cubs. They play the Brewers. Take a look at their schedule. Now, it's not as easy as those teams. So Philadelphia, I just think talent-wise, Joe, I just think talent amongst Philadelphia, San Diego, and Arizona, Philadelphia is above those teams for me. And so I do think that it may come down, and I'd have to check exactly when they play each other, but that series that San Diego plays Arizona, whenever that last one is, that could very well determine the final wild card spot in the National League. I don't think St. Louis makes it.
But if the Padres go the wrong way, I think the Diamondbacks, I do think they're done, Greg. I really do. He was too much and too big a part of their offense.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
How many games do they have left? I just don't think that guy, not to mention the resentment in the locker room, it's not good for the Diamondbacks. But we do have an update against the Red Sox as far as what's happening here. Do they get swept? We'll let you know as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS. But then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game time decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. We do have one game underway. And look, maybe I stuck a fork in Arizona a little too soon. They did just put a run up on the board at Fenway. Totally, and you know, Brandon Pfaadt has been just tremendous since he's come back from that little stint in AAA there. 2-1 is the score now, top of the fifth. Arizona trying to avoid total embarrassment here. And a guy like Brandon Pfaadt is the guy to do it here. But the Red Sox, still plenty of time here in the top of the fifth. They're only up a run, 2-1. And during the break, Greg, you were looking at the schedule for the National League, trying to figure out when is this all going to be decided? Because outside of the Cubs, and you like the Phillies, that third wild card spot could very well be up for grabs. And the scheduling down the stretch here over the last 35 games is crazy.
Yeah, I think if you are Miami and St. Louis, and if you want to take a step further with Pittsburgh, and you want to just do a deep dive if you're on the plane, you know, on one of those teams and say, what do the Padres' schedule look like the rest of the season? You're not going to be feeling really good because the Padres have an easy schedule, Joe, the rest of the year. Like, I mean, they get Washington, they get Colorado 4 times, they get the Giants. They really do. And they play LA at the end of the season. It may not mean anything for LA. They really, San Diego, have it all in front of them to be able to win. The only issue is if it's between them and Arizona and it's within 3 games, it may come down to the last weekend of the season because Arizona plays San Diego the final 3 games. And could Marte technically come back by then? Of course. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this may be over for him there. But Padres have a very soft remaining schedule here. And so it makes sense why their odds are higher than a lot of the other teams to get in the playoffs. And look, maybe that's just what it is right now. I think if on paper, if you had to look at it, as we discussed, 3 wildcard favorites are Cubs, Phillies, and Padres, with the Diamondbacks still right there. Diamondbacks have to get to the last week of the season less than 3 games out. And if they do, they have a shot. That's it.
Bottom line, you got, and that's all you can hope for at this point in the season, right, Craig? You got 35 games left. Control your own destiny, right? Play the teams that you're going to need to play that are in front of you or that you're battling and handle your business, and you'll have postseason baseball. Now, will any of it matter? Because do I think any of the teams we're talking about are going to catch lightning in a bottle and run? No, I don't, because the Dodgers still play in the league. And so do, in fact, the Cubs played earlier today, and How do you go from scoring as many runs as they do to 2 runs, not scoring any runs, and just 2 hits here today, as the White Sox did get it done earlier this afternoon? But it's funny, the Cubs just seem to be the forgotten because they play in the same division that the Brewers do here, Craig. I mean, do the Cubs have a legit shot at running the table here, even against the Dodgers?
I don't think so. I think the Brewers win the division. I think all your divisions are set in the National League. I don't think the only thing that I could see is some epic run for Philadelphia catching Atlanta. I don't think the Cubs catch Milwaukee, and I don't think anybody catches LA. Eventually, LA is going to get hot. It's almost like the same thing when the Red Sox were as hot as they were, and then the Dodgers were as cold as they were, and now it's all evening out again. And now the Dodgers are playing the Rockies and beating up on the Rockies, and the rest is history, so to speak. Dodgers probably, will also play the Giants down the stretch. I'm sure they play the Rockies again before the season ends. So that West is just, because you have 2 such bad teams, it makes the schedule really easy for those good teams in the National League West. And like I said, with San Diego, I guess they hadn't played Washington yet this season. And we know Washington is playing kids right now. They're playing toward next year too. Yes. So, yeah, I look. Well,
is it
who's
possible for the playoffs then? Out of all of those teams, because Milwaukee, we don't think. Yeah, no. Milwaukee, we don't think has the power to have success long term in the postseason. The Cubs, do they have?
Maybe.
You think? I don't think they're catching the Brewers, because the Brewers are built for the regular season, but.
Right, in the playoffs,
are they built for the postseason.
Like if you told me in the postseason that that a couple of guys got hot pitching for San Diego, and then Tatis got on fire, Manny Machado, and then they won, and then they beat Milwaukee. Yes, I could absolutely see that. I was just giving you my regular season view, which I think the National League to me is much clearer now maybe than what it was a week ago. The American League, I have no sense of anything. For bleep's sake, the Twins just swept the Braves. The Twins, if the season ended today, Joe, are in the wild card. The Twins.
Every one of these teams, Craig, National League, we certainly know any, but every one of them in the National League, everybody has warts. All of these teams have issues that could come and bite them in the postseason. It's not going to be a cakewalk for the Dodgers to run a third one back, is what I'm saying here. We got more Game Time decisions continuing on the grid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs. And I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university, it's AAU, it's got championship pedigree, and I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid. If it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the conference. It's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game Time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, I think Arizona heard us making fun of them as they have now taken a 3-2 lead over the Boston Red Sox. Welcome back in Game Time Decisions on the SportsGrid Network here. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. Big top of the fifth inning here for the Diamondbacks. Peyton Tully having some issues, and I don't think it was the long ball either. They're actually a couple of doubles, a single here. Corbin Carroll getting involved, so 3-2, and they got the right guy on the mound. If you're going to break a streak, a losing streak, Brandon Pfaadt has been the guy that I would want to get behind here. 4 innings, just 3 hits, 2 earned runs. He hasn't walked anybody, and he struck out 7, and they're only in the top of the 50s. He's only gone 4 innings, so far so good. Can they hold the lead? I think that's going to be the big question here now, Craig.
Yeah, it does feel like Chad Tracy has left Tully in way too long here. Like this inning, is, when we came on the air, I think this inning started. So we're looking at like a 25-minute inning or something like that. They let him give up, I think, 4 hits or 3 hits in the inning and 3 runs, and he's still in the game. I guess, maybe they play tomorrow or they play a bunch of games in a row where they have to get some length. I'm not really sure. I don't know what the Red Sox schedule is, but yeah, they're showing it now. Tully's thrown 30 pitches in the 5th inning, and this will be it for him. I guess they're just looking for him to get one more out, and then close it out here with 5. But he just got the final out of the inning. But yeah, he was just cruising through 4 innings, and the Diamondbacks came alive here. Diamondbacks bullpen, it's okay. It's not fantastic. So I think we're a long way from really figuring out who's going to win this game. But good news for us is we do have one game while we're going here on the air.
Yes, exactly. And it's actually turning out to be a pretty good one there. We also have coming up after the top of the hour, your Marlins in Philadelphia, and they have been feisty, Greg. They haven't been able to pull the wins, but when you got to go up against Sanchez and then Wheeler, they had opportunities in both games to win. It's not like they're getting blown out. We feel like we're watching 2 different leagues here.
Right.
Yeah, they've had some chances here, and they got the right guy on the mound here tonight.
They do. They have Sandy pitching today. He's been, one of, if not baseball's very best pitcher since July. He's been absolutely lights out, fantastic. Nola has not been good at all this season, but for whatever reason, lately he's been good. And also, for whatever reason, Nola has pitched very well against the Marlins, ironically. I don't know why. Joe Mack is back for Miami, so he will catch. That's a big boost to their lineup today. So he's batting, I think, toward the bottom of the lineup. And look, whenever a team has won 2 games in a row, the natural thought is, do they get the sweep? Do they take a little step back, knowing that they already won the series? I can't say. I don't know. I still think that Philadelphia, you could say Yankee Stadium in the American League, and I would say, okay. But Philadelphia and Citizens Bank Park is the toughest place to go in the National League. That I know for sure. I think it's the toughest in all of Major League Baseball. They get 50,000 there every single night. They're yelling and screaming. I was there for the playoffs in 2023. I had never seen a baseball game like it before. It is really hard to go there and win. Their team is not as good as Milwaukee, and their team is not as good as LA and maybe some others, and that's why they're not winning those games. But if you are young, if you're a young player and you've never seen it before, it can be overwhelming. And perhaps that's what happened to Miami yesterday, because they went with a bullpen game, Joe, and just basically, in the end, they ran out of arms. They just started giving up some runs late, and that's what ended up doing them in.
Yeah, gotta love the fight, though, in the Marlins has been fantastic for a young team. They are not crumbling under anything. So I'm looking forward. I think it's going to be a battle to the finish. For the Marlins here. I think they got a great shot of getting one here against Philly. We also have the Yankees, who welcomed back Carlos Rodon last night. Actually looked the part. They usually don't have a problem beating the Orioles. And tonight they got Will Warren, who feels like with, now that at least Max Fried on the IL, he's not in jeopardy of having to go back to the bullpen. But Will Warren on the mound against Chris Bassett, and it just feels like Bassett, the Yankees should be a favorite in this one, except it's a pick'em price, and I can't figure it out, Craig.
Ooh, I mean, the Orioles have had the best offense in the American League in August, so that's part of the conversation and why they've stayed alive. with Bassett, he's kind of a hard guy to figure out. The Orioles have been trying to figure it out all season too. They've started him.
Yeah.
They've brought him in for bulk. They've tried to switch his arsenal around a little bit, and they really never came to the conclusion. Now he's back off the IL. We'll see what he does today. But look, the reason why you can't really make the Yankees a huge favorite over anyone right now is they're just not scoring enough runs to do that. And the Orioles offense has come alive, so to speak. It's been better this month maybe than it's been all season long. Everybody's seemingly hitting for them too. They've made some changes, playing some players that haven't played that much, and that has worked. But yeah, I have no opinion on the game in particular tonight. It's one that I would pass on. As you said, when I see a line like this and I see the Yankees with a short number, it usually tells me something's going on.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso's been the hottest guy in this lineup, right? A 10-game hitting streak. He has been the most consistent, but yeah, they're not getting a lot else across the board. But I'm having a hard time with that price. It feels like the Yankees should have enough left-handed hitters and power in that lineup to be able to make it work. But, Will Warren's biggest issue, I believe, is the same thing that, we've talked about with a few guys here, like Jansen. Lefties are the problem for him. Yeah. And we're going to see how many of the Orioles are going to roll out here tonight. But Yankees looking to keep it together as we got more good news, right? I mean, Judge seems to be trending in the right direction. Bellinger, they're hoping to have back this weekend. And we know Stanton is just around the corner. 35 games left. If I'm the Yankees, I feel like I've weathered a very big storm so far this year. No, Craig?
Yeah, well, they mentioned for Judge for the first time, like legitimate baseball activities. So that's a really good sign for him. And once he steps on a field, the estimation, as we talked about yesterday, is it's 1 month, when he's doing baseball activities. So if that is now, that means, as we said yesterday, we could do it again today, around the middle to late September. So it's about a week or two of him playing before the postseason begins. Because when a player misses this much time, Joe, as we talked about yesterday, he's got to go on a rehab assignment, of which he plays one day and then doesn't play the next day, and then plays the next day, and then repeat for about a week. And then the next week he comes back, and then they wait for him to play back-to-back days. And then he takes a day off, and then they see how he feels. Like, this is going to take 2 weeks minimum of, like, rehab assignment stuff, and it'll start at the low level, too, for him. He's been out a really long time. I still think the timeline remains the same. You'll see him, I think, somewhere toward the middle to end of September, and it does feel, Joe, like he is coming back to play. The Yankees are 15 games over 500. That's the good news. They've banked a lot of wins. They're in a really good position. I don't think they'll catch Tampa Bay. They are 5 games behind them. They're going to play them head-to-head. There's still an opportunity there, but I still think Tampa Bay ends up winning the division.
Yeah, and, speaking of Tampa Bay, it's... we got a healthy Blue Jays, Max Scherzer, going against the Rays tonight. I am shocked this game wasn't. I mean, that's the problem, Greg. I thought for sure 250, 260. We're going to be looking at a Dodgers price here with Rasmussen on a mound.
What is it?
But there's been a lot of money that has come in on Toronto today, kind of keeping this thing down under the $2 mark here, and I kind of scratching my head with what's going on. So they were 240 last night. They opened up around minus 240. Now they're under $2. So am I missing something?
I don't know. I mean, I would never lay at 200, but you're pairing it at least with someone. There's no way I'm taking Toronto. There's absolutely no chance whatsoever. Max Scherzer has not been effective. Has Max Scherzer? I could take a look for myself. I'm going to guess, and again, Hall of Famer, one of the best pitchers in the last 20 years that we've seen. This is the end of his... I don't know why he wasn't honored in the All-Star game. He should have been with Verlander. But,
I agree.
He has not been effective at all this season, at all.
They did get their 6th victory in their past 8 games, 10-5, right? Win over Tampa Bay yesterday in St. Pete. Now, here they go again, a half a game out of that 3rd wild card spot. It is ugly in the American League, but don't worry. We're here to help sort it all out for you as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game time decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish. One Major League Baseball game underway. They've gone through 5 now. Once again, Arizona on top 3-2 against the Red Sox. Brandon Pfaadt throwing a gem here. Still hasn't walked anybody. Has struck out 8 through 5. Peyton Tolley, a little bit of an issue there. Got some walks going on there. Does have 6 strikeouts. And had not a great top of the 5th inning where Arizona did put a 3 spot on the board. Now Arizona looking to weather whatever it is here that's happening with Marte, trying to salvage a game here. And then I do believe they head back home to maybe get a little home cooking, sleep in their own beds, and try to get back on track on what is a very winnable 3rd wild card spot here in the National League. We mentioned the American League is a hot mess here, Greg, and I just said, you know, Toronto, they're rolling Scherzer out there, okay, which is, you know, you got to have somebody's got to take one for the team, but they're getting money in the market. They're winning games. They're half a game out of this 3rd spot in a wild card, and what looked like 3 weeks ago, like it was. It could have been anybody's spot. It's still anybody's, but it does feel we are a 5-6 game winning streak away from somebody sneaking into the postseason. And didn't Texas, when they ran it to the World Series years ago, Craig, was it with Bochy? Remember they snuck into the wild card, I believe, and then they ended up just getting hot at the right time. So
did Arizona.
I mean, maybe we're underestimating them, right? Same thing.
Yeah, Arizona, same thing. Got into the playoffs. Yeah, they played Texas in the World Series that year. Going back to Scherzer, and Scherzer, by the way, at this time last year, it was not the same, but it was a similar situation. Scherzer was hurt, I think, at the end last year, and then just came back and actually was serviceable for them last year in the postseason for Toronto. Now, maybe things change, and they're giving him every opportunity to do so. But his ERA is pushing 7, Joe. Like, he has not been good at all. I can't imagine him coming back and pitching next season. The second he retires, he's a Hall of Famer in 4 years from now. We know that. But he is, Joe, Verlander is similar in a way, but Scherzer just feels like that guy you cannot take the jersey off him. Like,
It's crazy.
Call me crazy. I think next season, you know, spring training is going to pop up, and Max Scherzer is going to be in spring training with Tampa Bay, you know, like thinking he can resurrect something, you know. So Verlander has said he is done. Scherzer has not said anything. But even with the plus 190, whatever, I just can't do it. I cannot back him tonight in Tampa. I can't do it.
Yeah. Well, listen, some guys are just winners, right? And no matter where he's gone, he's won. And even at 42 years old, because I think you're right, Verlander was the only older guy in Major League Baseball. They're about a year apart. But he has hinted in every direction that this is going to be it. But a guy like him, still rolling out there every fourth or fifth day, and the team being in contention, yeah, it's, there are crazier ways to rally around guys, right? You know what I mean? And that team might get a little healthier if they can get, Vlad back going in some way. Springer, that's anything is possible with 35 games to go and maybe make a run. But one thing is for sure, Tampa at 75-50 they've done their part to show that they're a real contender. But my goodness, it's going to start to get, how much does experience play a role these final 35 games, Craig? With, Toronto having been there just a year ago, and Tampa was playing in, Steinbrenner Field in a minor league ballpark a year ago.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm not worried about the Rays because I just think that they'll still, win the majority of their home games, although lately it hasn't gone the way that they would expect. I think they will before the end of the season. I know they had an off night last night. Nick Martinez had an off night last night. But I just think in the end, the 125 games into the season, so as you said, 30 some odd games, Tampa Bay is going to win 20 of those, Joe. They're going to win 20. They're going to end up at least with 95 wins, I would guess. And that's going to be good enough to get them a bye in the American League. It may not be good enough to get them the number one overall, but it's going to be good enough to get them a bye. And they won't be playing in the first round. And then in the American League Division Series, they're going to play some team that had to win the wild card and that team's going to have to go to St. Petersburg. I feel good about Tampa Bay's chances. But I would tell you that once that division series is done, I don't know if I think they'll win the American League Championship Series or even the World Series because, generally Tampa Bay, Milwaukee, Cleveland, those teams are more built for the regular season than they are for the postseason.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, right? Because and we talked about it earlier, the National League, I think there are some teams that I think they all have warts. They all have parts of their team that can be exploited by others. But as good as the Brewers have been, I don't know that you can run the table without guys hitting for power. And they just don't hit for power. And I think that can only get you so far. I think the Cubs might be one of the best hitting teams heading into the postseason. But you want to talk about, they could very well have the MVP on their team. But
maybe.
I mean, Holmes pitched well today. I think some of the additions they made were great, but I can't put my finger on the Cubs. There's something about them I don't think I can trust. And I'll go back to your Phillies comment. This feels like a team. It's a veteran team. Don Mattingly, right? The interim coach has to take over, about a quarter of the way in there. And it feels like if a team can get hot, they're the ones that can get hot. I'm just not buying it's going to be a cakewalk. Despite all the talent by the Dodgers, I don't think it's going to be as easy as the market is pricing the Dodgers to be. Like they're just going to run the table and win again. Don't forget, it took them 7 games to beat Toronto last year, Greg.
Agreed. And look, from Philadelphia's perspective, they were supposed to go further than they've gone 4 years in a row. They got knocked out.
Yeah.
Like everyone had them, okay, this is the World Series year. This is the World Series year. And they're slowly progressing the other way. Not more forward, more back. But maybe this is the year because they're going back. Then maybe they take the step forward. Look, Sanchez hasn't been as dominant as he was. Wheeler hasn't been as dominant as he was. I just think, though, everybody goes through that time of the season where you're a little bit tired. You're a little bit going through it. And Philly, somehow, they've been able to overcome that. I think they've won 4 straight games.
Except for tonight. They're not winning tonight. I'll say it. You don't have to say it. They're not winning tonight. We've got more Game Time decisions coming your way here on the Grid.
it's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game time decisions here on the Sports Grid Network as we look to wrap up this first hour together. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish, and we've got an update from Fenway, Craig, and boy, the Diamondbacks turning it on here. Nootbaar, huh? What a two-run shot to put them up, the Diamondbacks 5-2. I would imagine Boston likely going to the bullpen here at some point, no?
Yeah, they did take Tolley out, and they put in Greg Weissert, and he immediately gave up that two-run home run. So it's 5-2 now. Probably the biggest home run of Nootbaar's season. Definitely the biggest home run with him in a Diamondbacks uniform. And so maybe the Diamondbacks salvage a game here and stay alive in the playoff chase. And if they do win, that puts them back in a tie for the third-place spot in the National League wild card because the Padres lost to the Mets earlier today.
Yeah, and they've got a interesting schedule as well, Craig, coming up here, the Diamondbacks, as we had mentioned, that they will return home after this to take on, I believe, no, they got one more trip to go here. Yeah, they got to take on the Reds on the way back.
Yeah, the Reds, that's not a good team. They should be able to win that. I mean, maybe it comes down to
they should bounce back. They should bounce back.
There's a better chance of the Diamondbacks and Padres fighting it out that last weekend than not. It just kind of feels like it at this point. And again, as we've talked about throughout the show, getting Marte back will be the key. If he does not come back, you probably right now would back San Diego. That's it.
The August 24th, the next weekend coming up. That's a huge series against the Cubs. Cubs coming to Chase Field for them. That's a good litmus test for them. Some, they should have some winnable games there, but they gotta figure it out because then they got the Giants and then Philadelphia and then Houston, Texas, even your Miami, your Marlins are going to be playing. So they have got still a little bit of room to be able to try to work this out, but that's all contingent upon the Padres not ripping off another 13 out of 15 games and winning. So they've got to be very careful over the next week or so. A lot of turmoil, I got to feel, in that organization. And with the loss of Marte, I don't think we're going to see him back. I don't know if once you put him on the restricted list and he's under contract, right? It's not like you can't just drop him, right? You're not paying him, but at the same time, as soon as the season's over, do you just release him? Is that how that works?
No, because I think he's got a long-term contract. So I guess what's probably going to happen with this, and I've been wrong before on these issues, but on these CBA issues, but what I think could happen, let's just say that, is the Diamondbacks will just have him on this restricted list indefinitely, and then eventually the agent for Marte will call the players union and say, hey, it's time to start paying Marte again. You got to get him off the restricted list, and then they have this discussion.
Right.
Okay, but is he going to come back to the team? Because if not, we're going to keep him on the restrict, that kind of stuff. So that's when the Players Association files a grievance. They get involved. They're always going to fight for the player regardless of that. This restricted stuff is not indefinite. Marte.
Oh, it's not.
No. Marte is going to look at his direct deposit, Joe, and there's nothing coming in. And he's going to say, okay, right. I'll listen. I'm not going to go play for them, but I'll show up. And I'll start working out, and I'll do whatever they need me to do to get off that restricted list. I mean, Joe, you know how it is. Like we all do. We don't get the money in the bank. We're like, even though Marte's got $100 million, he's going to look and say, wait a second here. I'm not getting paid. Okay, I'll start showing up and get my money
looks
again.
different. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, your outlook
it doesn't mean they don't play.
A lot different.
And right. By the way, they could also come to an agreement. They could come to an agreement.
Yes.
And look, they can't withhold his pay. You can't do that. But they can keep him on the restricted list for a period of time until the Players Association starts to get involved and Marte's agent starts to get involved. But it seemed like today we got a little bit more clarity that maybe that he said through his agent that he doesn't want to play again. So, we'll see.
We'll see what happens there. I'm curious. What happens if he's not playing by the time the postseason comes? Does that take up a roster spot? Are they allowed to replace him, or does he count against?
Yeah, if he's on the IL, yes, but they haven't placed him on the IL yet. He's on the restricted list. He's going to come back from the restricted list, and then I think he'll go on the IL, and that will allow him to get paid, but it will allow them to replace him on the roster.
To replace him on the roster. There you go.
I would assume the Diamondbacks will want to do that. If the Diamondbacks were out of it, Joe, they may just want to put him on the restricted list the rest of the season if they could. They'll fight that,
I agree.
But I would assume they want to call somebody else up for it. And by the way, I believe they did call somebody up, but that's also like playing with a man short, playing with 25 guys. I'm assuming they're only playing with 25 today and not 26. Eventually, they got to make a move so they can have 26 again.
This has got to come to a head one way or the other, and sooner rather than later for the Arizona Diamondbacks. All right, what do you do after you get beat up 22-0 last game? You play another game tonight. We've got it covered. Game time decisions on the grid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome in Game Time Decisions here on this Wednesday in the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish, and we are off and running here. Major League Baseball tonight. Plenty of games getting ready to start this hour, including the Marlins and the Phillies. We've got one game already happening at Fenway, and it looks like the Arizona Diamondbacks could very well catch the Red Sox here, which would be great for them as they get ready to travel back home. They're up 5-2 in the top of the sixth. We had some games earlier today. You mentioned it also, Craig, last hour. What happened to the Braves? Like, what am I missing here? They lost again today to the Twins. 6-4. Like, what am I missing? I mean, Taj Bradley, who's been very good, don't get me wrong, for the Twins. He's actually been better than I thought he would be. But you can't lose. You can't get swept by Minnesota, right?
Well, too late. They did.
Wow.
They didn't hit as much in this series as they have hit in previous series. That was part of it. They just brought back Smith Shawver and went to a 6-man rotation. Maybe that's part of some of this too. I mean, look, every team in baseball, including the Braves, over a 162 game season, are going to get swept not once, not twice, not three, several times are going to get swept over the course of the season. And I just think that this is one of those. But I can't at this point take anything away from the Twins. I don't really understand how they're doing it, Joe, in particular, but maybe they knew something that we didn't know, acquiring players at the trade deadline and going forward a little bit, because they honestly, I don't think they're going to make it, but standings wise, they have just as much a chance to get in as anybody else right now. So I mean, the Twins are easily the most boring team of all those teams in the American League when you really think about it, but they're there.
It's crazy, right? When you think about this, if the season ended tonight, Minnesota is your third wild card team, which I just did not see that coming. 63 and 65, 2 games under 500. But you know what?
2 games under.
I would rather the Twins over Texas. Watching Texas play baseball is worse than it's like watching paint dry. The offense is atrocious. They've got a game here tonight coming up where Rocker, who's been throwing batting practice for the better part of a month right now, taking on a Nats team who's been a little bit feisty. And, oh, yeah, they got this guy Cavalli going tonight who, you know what? Pretty good pitcher here. You want to talk about the dog of the night. This is my dog of the night here. Okay? This is my Angels like you had last night tonight.
Gotcha. By the way, did you I was thinking this morning, I was wondering if you sweat it all night with the Royals, taking the Royals for them, waiting for them to come back in the 9th inning to beat the A's. Even the A's can't even hold the lead. Oh my gosh, things are going so bad for them. They were up 3-0 into the night. Did the Royals score 3 in the 9th or 4 in the 9th? I don't know. I know they came all the way back to win in the bottom of the 9th against the A's.
Yeah, then there's no reason. There's also no reason for them not to have scored at least 5 runs here, because that was just absurd the way they made Perkins. They had an opener, and then they brought in Perkins, who had been throwing batting practice and getting lit up, but. Thank God for him, because, boy, that was not good. They ended up scoring 3 in the bottom of the 9th to get it done and walk it off. But it was not fun watching it happen in any way, shape, or form. But the good news is they do have another game coming up here today against the Athletics. Should they even allow the Athletics and that AAA team to play games at night? I mean, they should just be like, listen, you got to play at 12 o'clock so nobody has to sit and endure themselves through this. But, yeah, you had said it yesterday, of the 35 or so games they have left. What was the number you threw out? Like the most they're going to have wins-wise out of the last 35? 5, did you say? Or 5 or 6?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think that's about right. They'll probably get about 5 wins. Just don't know when they're going to come.
Going to be...
Yeah, well, they have 77 losses. They're definitely losing 100. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion. 110, I don't know. Maybe that's a bit rich. I would guess they'll win 5-6 games the rest of the season. I mean, last night was a game they should have won. I don't know who blew it. Let me take a look and see who blew it for them. But I did. It was too late for me, but it did seem like they were going to win that game, and we'd come back on here today. So
It was 3-1, yeah.
A's led 3-0 after 7, and then the Royals started chipping away, and the Royals bullpen gave up runs again. Okay, that's not a surprise. So the
Shocker.
A's yesterday, Perkins, that guy Basso pitched really well. Perkins pitched great for the A's.
Yes.
3 2/3, 1 hit,
That's
1
what I
walk,
said.
4 strikeouts.
Yep.
But the guy who blew it yesterday has actually been, I think, one of their better relief pitchers, if I'm not mistaken. He's actually been their best relief pitcher. Hogan Harris is the one that blew it. I know a lot of people probably never heard. He's been really good for them this year. He blew it, yeah.
Well, I knew they were starting to hit here, the Royals. So the problem is they waited far too long to be able to get it done last night. That is for sure. But I believe today, Jeffrey Springs back on the mound for the Athletics. Lugo going for the Royals here tonight. And I don't think this is going to be one of the 5 or 6 games they're in. I think the Royals, we're in that price point again now, $180, $185 that we're laying with the Royals. But it's only because it's the Athletics. And if your best reliever is blowing games for the Athletics, I like Lugo's chances of limiting the damage here tonight, no?
Yes, and as well, we have an update here in Boston, and a very big one, as Brandon Pfaadt has surrendered a 3-run home run to Mickey Gaspar. And we have a tie ball game here in Boston, from 5-2 to 5-5 in the bottom of the 6th inning, and that's the end of Brandon Pfaadt after pitching fantastic for 5 2/3. They tried to give him the last out. He couldn't get it. That's Gaspar's home run, 3rd consecutive game I'm seeing here. Is that possible? He's only got 3 on the season, so I don't know how that's possible. But anyway, that game's going right down to the wire. So sorry to divert from the previous game we were talking about. Yeah.
I will, just to put it in context for folks, give you an idea, because Craig is right. It has been a epic, and I mean epic, failure with that bullpen of the A's. They have nearly a combined 6 ERA, the relievers do on this team. Craig, they have given up a league-high 341 runs. That's just the bullpen. 341 runs. They are no lead is safe once that A's bullpen gets involved. So 7 o'clock, I think 7:40, the Royals will look to get a rare maybe sweep here in a series. That's going to be very interesting to see how that goes down. I believe the Giants and the Guardians again. Here we go, right? Parker Messick, a guy you and I like a lot. You have seen him in person. The Giants just feel like they're rolling through the punches here at this point. But Parker Messick is a guy that should be able to dominate a team, especially if they're having trouble hitting lefties, no?
Yeah, I see a -200 here from what I'm seeing in tonight's game. So that's, probably tells you that Cleveland's got a good shot to win. Yesterday, it was Wisenhunt who pitched for the Giants, and he gave up
and that
5
game
runs
was over,
immediately.
right? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Today, it is the Major League debut of Matt Wilkinson for the San Francisco Giants. Matt Wilkinson, who is seemingly pitched fairly well here, it looks like, in the minor leagues. He's made 20 starts. His ERA is 3.40. It's a tough environment to pitch in out west, where the Giants play. And he has struck out 96 batters in 60 innings, Joe. So this is a high strikeout guy for San Francisco. So I would say that they probably lose again, but they won't get killed like they did yesterday. Yesterday, you pretty much saw the writing on the table immediately.
Yeah, Joe Adell turning out to be a great addition for the Guardians. They needed some power, and he is delivering that for the Guardians. Maybe more importantly, Foster Griffin looked very much like what we have seen him look like this year. Yeah, 6 innings, only give up 5 hits, 1 earned. But Joe Adell, 3 for 4, had the home run, had 6 RBIs in that game for the Guardians. They're going to need more of that here moving forward if the postseason is going to be a legit reality for them. We got much more to get to as Game Time Decisions continues on the Grid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Here we go. Game time decisions on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish as we are getting ready here for a couple of games that are going to start this hour and next hour. We've had a lot of day baseball going on for you, which is nice. We've had a couple of games already in the books. Paul Skeens won a game. No, he didn't win it. Pittsburgh came back to win a game against Detroit. Which, by the way, you and I we talked about him yesterday, and we've both been screaming about Ashcraft and just how good,
he's good,
and in a zone this kid has been. That is back-to-back 80-pitch, 8 and 9 inning games in which he has just been. But no offense to the Marlins, Detroit over the last month has been a much different offensive team.
Definitely. Agreed.
But he made them look ridiculous, Craig. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I think what you could do with this sort of information is, right now, not much. But what I think you do, provided there's a regular baseball season, which we're hoping for and everything, I think he's one of those guys, Joe, that going into next year, when you see the odds for NL Cy Young open and he's 40-1, you do that. I think that's what you do. You take him at 40-1 or 35-1, whatever. His odds are not going to be even near the top. He's on the Pirates. He's anonymous. Skeens will have shorter odds than him. I think that's what you do. You know what it reminds me of? He reminds me of the year before Corbin Burns won the Cy Young Award with Milwaukee. You kind of sensed at the end of the season, hey, this is a guy next year that looks like if he just keeps going from what he did, and he ended up winning the Cy Young. That is a absolute guy to watch next year in Ashcraft. Gets deep into the games. He's looked fantastic.
I mean, came off that first complete game right against the Marlins, was tremendous. 80 pitches he threw in that game, went 8 innings yesterday, gave up 1 run. And that was it. I mean, really good stuff. This is a name to remember because you're not going to – a 62-66 Pittsburgh team is not going to garner a whole lot of headlines because most people are just waiting for the wheels to fall off here. Although O'Neal Cruz came back with a big home run yesterday. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very well. Yeah, very well. I mean, listen, home run a bust for him. We knew that. But remember that Ashcraft name. Next time they're going to go up against a team with a winning record, because if they're not a favorite, if they're an underdog, he's definitely a pitcher moving forward that is worth backing here. So Kudos to them. They did win earlier today. They ended up getting a late comeback. They were down in that game for most of that game and then came from behind to get it done there. The Diamondbacks have now tied it up? Is it 5-5 still? Oh, that's right. Red Sox tied it up.
Yes.
We are in the 7th inning, 5-5 in that one as Arizona is trying not to get swept here. The Mets won earlier today. I didn't have that on the bingo card, 4-2. And you've also got the Braves getting swept by Minnesota. White Sox beat the Cubs. And now we're in the bottom of the first with the Phillies and Marlins, Craig. Is that correct?
Yeah, Marlins got nothing in the top. And so far, Schwarber's led off for the Phillies with a just pop out. So nothing happening yet in this game, which has really been... I know Philadelphia scored in the bottom of the first yesterday, but generally speaking, the Marlins games, whoever they play, have been pretty low scoring in the first couple of innings. So, as the game goes, and I would expect this game to be low scoring too. Aaron Nola, clearly to me, one of the used to be an ace in baseball. He's not anymore, but he's pitching better. Sandy's an ace. Philly's bullpen now back to full strength. Philly was throwing out guys I never heard of yesterday, Joe, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. And usually Sandy goes deep into games. Low scoring game today, I think, for me, between these two teams.
Now, we do have an interesting game coming up here at 6:40, Craig. Listen, Cincinnati is not going to set the world on fire. Even though they play in a hitter's ballpark and should average 9 runs a game.
Unbelievable.
They do have a pretty good pitcher on the mound, and the Cardinals are not going to blow anybody out by scoring 22 runs. But Liberatore, to me, is just a gas can here. So I can sit 2-1. It feels like an under. Call me crazy, except I'm seeing 8.5s here, Craig. So what am I missing?
I have no idea. The Reds can't score. The Reds don't score any runs whatsoever. And Chase Burns is one of the 3 best pitchers in the National League this year. Maybe even higher than that. These guys great. So I'm with you. I don't see any runs in this game today, but maybe the Reds finally wake up. They didn't yesterday.
No, they didn't. And listen, Liberatore, he's got over a 5 ERA. It's not, let's be realistic. I think the last 6 shutout, August 2nd in Toronto, but he's dropped his last 2 starts, lost to the Cubs last Friday. So the Cardinals are not going to score a ton of runs here, and I certainly don't think they're going to score a ton of runs off of Chase Burns. But it is that lineup of Cincinnati that has become home run or bust, right, Greg? That's the only way they're scoring runs, it feels like. Yeah. It's a home run or strikeout. And, it feels like if Cincinnati was going to win one, they're a minus 130 favorite with one of the best pitchers in the National League. That tells you what's going on offensively for that team. Does Francona survive this season? What did you think about that?
I don't know. I'm starting to think maybe not. It will depend on September with him, I think. I always say that it really is never the manager. It's always the players, but they're not hitting at all. I would say this. There's no chance the hitting group, whoever that they have as hitting coaches, come back. There's none.
Stays.
So if Francona isn't willing to say farewell to his hitting coach, whoever that is in Cincinnati, and I'm sorry to say, they have to make changes there. That offense should not be getting shut out on a nightly basis. It's fine if they're not going to be one of the better offenses. They're getting shut out by nobodies, Joe. Like, this is every day.
Yeah, unacceptable on so many different levels. It's just unacceptable here. Also unacceptable is allowing a team to score 22 runs against you while you put up 0. And that is exactly what we had last night happen in Milwaukee. But the good news is, they get to play a different game here today. It still only counts as 1 loss. I guess that's the glass half full. But the reality is 22-0. You lost. You got embarrassed against the best team in Major League Baseball, who, quite honestly, has got a really good pitcher on the mound, and I don't know that bounce back is happening. We'll ask Craig what he thinks as Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
it's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
You know, the dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, you know, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. Joe Raineri alongside Craig Mish, as we do have plenty of Major League Baseball still coming your way here tonight. Will Seattle bounce back after getting humiliated in Milwaukee last night, 22-0? We'll talk about that, but we do have, of course, week 2 of the preseason getting ready to kick off tomorrow. We also have a couple of signings along with some more injury news, and sometimes it just goes from bad to worse for folks. But Travion Diggs is no longer with the Dallas Cowboys secondary. He is now with the Seattle champion, Seattle Seahawks here. So they were a little thin there in that secondary. Mike McDonald, well, you know, he's making a name for himself. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's a tremendous defensive mind. And yeah, now he needed a little help in that secondary, and that's a pretty good signing for them. But call me crazy, Greg. I am still looking for ways to fade Seattle after the Super Bowl win. I just think they're going to regress in a lot of different areas. I could be wrong, but I don't see them contending against the Rams in that, or the 49ers in that division.
I think that's a fair assessment, Joe. The Seattle was a weird Super Bowl champion last year. They were the best team in the NFL, but it did sort of feel like a lot of teams fell short. The Chiefs didn't make the playoffs. The Bills took a step back. The San Francisco had all those injuries. It was the Rams' strange ending to their season. It just didn't feel like a normal year in the NFL. Now, I don't ever want to take anything away from Seattle because Seattle was fantastic. They got to the Super Bowl. They beat New England. That was another bizarre scene to have the Patriots in the Super Bowl of all teams too. I have a sneaky suspicion, Joe, that it's not going to be that much of a parity type year this year. I think the better teams are going to rise this year. I think Kansas City will be much better than they were a year ago. I think Buffalo will get deep this year. So I'm with you. I'm sort of thinking that you're not going to get a surprise team winning the Super Bowl. I think you'll get one of the favorites, not named Seattle. Whether that the Rams are obviously the darling team right now. Everyone thinks the Rams are going to do it, but I think Buffalo eventually they're going to get there. And maybe somebody else too. You know, another sneaky team. Everyone seems to really think the Bears are that team that is going to take the next step this year too. I mean, it seems like does it seem to you, Joe, that they're the hottest betting team? It feels like everyone is talking about the Bears. Am I wrong about that? It feels like they think Ben Johnson's going to take the team to the next level. Is that fair or unfair? I don't know that to be true.
Ben Johnson is the NFL's version of Curt Cignetti, the very brash and outspoken head coach of the national champion Indiana. It just still feels weird saying you're national champion Indiana Hoosiers and not be talking about basketball. It's a little weird. But he's got that persona, like, all we do is win. Google me. Like he's got, he came out earlier in the week and said that as far as he's concerned, he's planning on breaking the record for the best offense the NFL has ever seen. He's going to break all sorts of yardage records. It's interesting, but you know what? If it plays in a locker room and his team rallies around him, I'm not a Caleb Williams fan to begin with, but I do think you ultimately.
I think he's in line.
I
think he's going to have a big year, Joe.
All.
Oh no, I don't know. I think he. I mean, I was shocked. Go take a look at his stats from last year. They were off the charts good. I didn't even realize he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. I guess the reason why I would buy into the Bears a little bit is the confluence of events. It felt like last year's Bears were different than like 20 years of Bears football. Like you kind of felt like, hey, this may be a good team, maybe, right?
Yes.
And it was Ben Johnson's first year, and then the place that he left just fell on their face. So that's why, to a little bit of a degree, I'm sort of buying into the hype a little bit with Chicago. I'm sort of thinking that maybe this team is real, and I don't know about winning a Super Bowl. It's the NFL. Crazy things happen. But maybe this is the Bears' year where they, win 12 games, host a home game, make a deep shot toward the postseason. Maybe.
Nah, total fade for me, Mish. I could not disagree more. I'll tell you why. Because last year, the reason he threw for so many yards and had so many yards is because they were trailing going into the second half in just about every game. But they also had tremendous variance luck. No, do you think they're going to have a plus 20 or more in turnovers again this year? They had more come from behind second half wins than anybody. That stuff is going to regress, and I don't know. I got to see it to believe it. He did have a chance to impress me, and he couldn't get it done against the Rams when it mattered the most. So maybe something else will change there. But the good news is, why they play the games, and we got a ton of them as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
It's kind of cut and dry that the Dodgers are going to win it, which is not a guarantee. This is not taxes and death, so to speak. The Dodgers can lose games. We've seen it. They had a long losing streak. So the Dodgers could maybe fall off. You never know. Now, I do expect them to make the playoffs, and I expect them to win the division, and I expect them to win the NLDS, but then anything after that, I think is suspect.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous.
Outspoken with Dan Cilio, only on SportsGrid.
What Michigan have to play versus Penn State is insane. Like, instead of Big Ten teams worrying about SEC and all that, like, Michigan fans should not be happy about what Matt Campbell gets to walk into. James Franklin's got to be kicking himself. Penn State do not play Oregon, Indiana, or Ohio State. They avoided the entire Big Three of the it's incredible.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Yes, football is back here. Preseason week 2. 2 games tomorrow. You got the Raiders and the Texans. You got the Niners and the Chargers going tomorrow, giving way, to the Jets and Steelers on Friday. A lot of starters playing for some teams, a ton others not. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We'll get you caught up with all of who's in and who is out. And it's not hard to figure because once you look at the odds board, you'll start to see who's playing starters and who's not in preseason football. In the meantime, we got some Major League Baseball action on tap here tonight. A couple of games underway right now here, Craig. It looks like Diamondbacks and the Red Sox, 5-5 in this one still? And your Marlins, I don't think have any score against the Phillies?
Yep, nothing going on here. Bottom of the second in Philadelphia, and Luis Arraez got the first hit for the Phillies today, which doesn't surprise anybody, but they've been able to do nothing. Miami's been able to do nothing, so no score in the second. Boston is threatening here. They do have 2 runners on in the bottom of the 7th inning as they try to take a lead here on Arizona. This game's gone back and forth, but still, as I said, bullpens today. Look, Chapman in the 9th, yes. Boston has some decent guys. Arizona has some decent guys. But I have a feeling we may have 2 more lead changes before this game is over.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Phillies only a couple of hits off Sandy there, but no damage yet. We do have a couple of games getting ready to start. Yankees taking on Baltimore. Nice Carlos Rodon shows up last night. They lose a lefty. They gain a lefty. They win a game against Baltimore. It's a pick-em price here for the Yankees with Will Warren on the mound against Chris Bassett. I'll take my chances with the Yankees there. But my question is, what do you do with a team that loses 22-0 the night prior in epic, embarrassing fashion? I mean, epic, embarrassing fashion. Now, they do have Logan Gilbert on the mound tonight, this Seattle Mariners team, but it's not that they're, 75-50, Craig, and you have a bad game, it happens. They're 59-67, and it should be worse. I can argue it should be worse than that. The idea that they're playing a 78-48 best team in a Major League Baseball, Milwaukee Brewers, and somehow, because they lost 22-0, are going to bounce back, I'm not buying it. I think Seattle, you lose 22-0, you lost 22-0 for a reason. And I don't think the Brewers are just going to roll over and say, all right, we got you good last night. You're going to be fine here. I still would look to back the Brewers in this spot at home.
Yeah, I would too. I would say, Joe, that if this was a college or pro football game, a team that lost 21-0, I'd want to bet on that team that lost 21-0 the next week. Because it feels like that steam just builds up and up and up, and it feels like those in football, they take it more seriously.